but I believe Britain was in terms of a large scale outlawing of slavery, and in terms of on a practical scale, I think it was in 1807. Obviously, there was a transition period, and then the 1830s, it seems to be when the enforcement of it seems to be more effective. Other countries around this time are still using slave labor very actively, whether that be in European colonies or even on the western east coast of Africa and even into the Middle East. And so indentured labor seems almost like a way to try to hang on to a lot of this industry. Otherwise, a lot of these companies and businesses weren't able to be competitive still. And you might say, well, boo-hoo, you're using slave labor, in quite appalling conditions. But I think it's interesting to see that those factors, at least externally from the rest of the world, maybe it wasn't that pragmatic at that time.
I think you're absolutely right. There is still slave labor. There are lots of countries that are still using slave labor and benefiting from it. In the end, the requirements of capitalism and capital don't change very much over times, right? So you had competition between plantations, but you had competition across colonies, plantation colonies, and of course this was a period when free trade was beginning to become something that everybody wanted more of. So there.
Yes, but it sounds as though as well, if the particularly government officials and politicians are basically saying to the plantation owners in the UK, well, if you can't be competitive with these other companies that are from abroad, even if it is through more nefarious means that we've actually just outlawed and paid a lot of money to outlaw, then it doesn't really matter. The consumer comes first, and if we can get a lower price of goods, then that's that. Is that what I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the Sugar Act? Is that what that was enforcing essentially? This allowing more free trade.
That's right. It was, and of course, the political economy of that actually, as far as the UK was concerned, was pretty straightforward, right? Because the consumers in the UK are the voters. And what even though there was a very small proportion of people during this period who were voting, it still was more important for the government to ensure that its popularity in the UK was upheld. On the other hand, of course, quite a lot of the people in Parliament were reasonably well-off people for whom the plantation owners were actually quite a close network. So, for instance, Gladstone's father was a plantation owner, I think in Guyana. I'm not sure if it was in Guyana. And so you can see.
I think
so they come from quite different.
From what I remember, I think there was an Oxford Union debate where I remember it being mentioned.
So they come from quite different directions, and quite a lot of the pressure that was being put from the plantation owners, actually, at least in writing, was through people like Gladstone Senior.